And it's the use of ICTs to involve citizens in public decision-making with the goal of empowering citizens for the benefit of society. And, you know, I'm not saying that there is no methods of digital participation. I think a lot of political leaders, based on studies, and I think you know, probably experiences of people here in this room, have seen that political leaders do go on social media to engage the public and share information about their policies and ideas and get feedback. But it's not a systematic method, and it's not necessarily consistent. And through the social media platforms, it's harder to gauge the level to which that participation online actually feeds into, you know, government policy making and service delivery programs. So that feedback loop isn't necessarily there. And because we're in Tanzania and ICNL, we engage frequently with the Open Government Partnership, which is a multilateral initiative that aims to secure concrete commitments from governments to promote open government, empower citizens, fight corruption, and harness new technologies to strengthen governance. And it aims to secure commitments to create sustained e-participation platforms from the governments who are members. There are 12 countries in sub-Saharan Africa who are members of OGP, and in September, exciting news, if anyone hears from Kenya, Kenya became the government co-chair of OGP. This is a 2-year position, so there are many opportunities for Kenya to demonstrate its leadership on open government principles. And I'll just ask the room, how many of you know what OGP is, what the Open Government Partnership is? You heard about it before. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so not too many people in the room are familiar with OGP. Hopefully, after this session, you can go onto the OGP platform and learn whether your country is a national member of OGP. And as I was saying, because we're here in Tanzania, Tanzania was once a member of OGP, and in 2017 withdrew from OGP, unfortunately. But there's been some developments recently. And so I want to invite Nuro Maro from the Tanzania Human Rights Defenders Coalition to come and speak about the relationship between the government of Tanzania and OGP, and you know, why you think that Tanzania's involvement with this process would be beneficial to the country, to the digitization process and internet freedom and civic space.
So thank you so much, Shemnan. Good afternoon, all of you. Mambo, karibu Tanzania. Yeah, thank you for that a brief introduction. I think all of us now, at least you have an idea what OGP is. As she introduced, this is a multilateral initiative that needs us, all of us as stakeholders, civil society organization, development partners, and the government to work together towards achieving our development goals through transparency, accountability, and others, as she has introduced. So for me, my task is sharing, talking about a little bit about the relationship between Tanzania and the OGP. Actually, Tanzania was among the 78 founding members of OGP in 2011, before withdrawing its commitment from OGP in 2017. So if we will look back in 2011, our previous president, Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, his interest was on improving public services delivery, government responsiveness, combating corruption, and building peace and greater trust and the culture of human rights. And through that, our government of Tanzania, we had 4 priorities which we were working on, in 4 pillars, which are transparency, accountability, citizen participation, and technology and innovation. So, our government developed an action plan from 2011, which was implemented up to 2017 before withdrawing from the OGP. So if we would like to assess why should we rejoin the OGP, maybe we can make a little bit of reflection of these 4 pillars. What have we achieved through the 4 pillars? Because we had an action plan in which all of us as civil society organizations, the government and other development partners were working on, and we see transformative action which were taken by all stakeholders, and we can measure it from the achievement we achieved in that in the period of that 5 years. Maybe to start by one, I will just mention a few of them, starting with the transparency. From our action plan, within a period of 5 years, we were able to establish 3 parliamentary watchdog committees chaired by members from opposition parties to oversee government performance and the utilization of resources in central, local government, and parastatal. And this is a key to development because it is through participation and through dialogue from both leading parties and opposition parties, where we were able to scrutinize the acts of our leaders, to scrutinize our government institution, and within this period of time, for those who are following up politics in Tanzania, and for us from Tanzania, we have witnessed a lot of achievement, including identifying things which were hidden from our leaders, and that was very important, and participation is a key. But another thing was establishment of the complaint desk in central and local government, which allows citizens now can scrutinize the work of those who are in power, but also we know where is our money going, but also we participate in decision making. For us who are aware of our system through our local governments, at least people are participating in decision making from their villages, wards to the district level. But also with this action plan, we were able to establish an oversight board of committee at health, education, water services, and delivery centers, of which also citizens then get a chance to assess quality of services, accessibility, and effectiveness of the service providers. But also with the action plan, we were able to establish the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority to ensure that all tendering process are properly adhered to accordance with the Public Procurement Act. And again, in the budget, we were able to we had a policy of publishing quarterly budget expenditure reports, whereby the citizens get a chance to see how are we spending our money, because this is our money. We are paying taxes. We need to see how are we spending, where is the money going, are we improving the service, the quality of services. So, and this was important, and through this, we have achieved a lot, because those who are in power, the actors now are accountable for their acts. And we see, and for those who have been in Tanzania in the last 10 years, we can see the difference which were made. There is at least the improvement in service delivery, health services, education, and other things. And if we come to the second pillar on civic engagement, and through OGP action plan, we were able to formulate and approve a budget through participatory approach, as I've said. But also there is pillar of integrity and accountability, whereby our government it established an ethics secretariat for preventing and combating corruption. The Commission for Human Rights and Good Government, which now is responsible for monitoring the human rights situation in the country. But all of them are the achievement from the OGP. But also, we were able to establish the National Audit Office and the Parliamentary Watchdog Committees, all of them working on participatory issues. And the last pillar is technology and innovation. And through OGP action plan within 5 years, we had a National Information and Communication Technology Plan, and this was implemented in 5 years. And we didn't have a policy on ICT. With the OGP, now we have an ICT policy as a platform to transform Tanzania to knowledge-based society. And through the policy, the Foundation for Government, we have witnessed the Foundation for Government Departments, learning institutions, non-government organization, NGO, like for us, I'm from the CSO sector, we have an online information system on which now all of us we are using to in registration, reporting, and communicating with the Office of the Registrar, and that has eased our work as NGO, and it is creating an enabling environment for all of us to participate in implementation of national development plans. So those are few achievements which we have achieved. We achieved from 2011, I didn't mention all of them, to 2017, and you can see how participatory decision-making, how AGP is important for all of us as Africans, and everyone in the world, and it is very crucial for citizens to participate in decision-making, to participate in all processes of taking action to implementation of action plan. Then after 2017, we were not in OGP, but we are happy that this year, during the Democracy Summit, in her statement, Our Excellency, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, she declared that Tanzania is planning to rejoin in the OGP. That was March 31st, if I'm not mistaken. So at least we see there is a hope that there is a willingness of the state to go back to the OGP. We see what our government is implementing now. It is aligns with the principles of OGP, that is transparency, accountability, innovation, and all of that, because we are participating in decision making, in law making. For instance, we have a public hearing whereby the public is invited to comment on the proposed bill before being the law, but also we are participating in a budget from the village. We have a system that everyone from before having a national budget, it starts from villages, people contributing, providing their recommendations and suggesting what they want. Then the recommendation will be taken to wards, to district, to regional, up to the central government. And that's now the public, the citizen own the process. It is them who say we need water, we need a health facility here, maybe we need some reforms from this area, we need this and that, and to become more participatory, and citizens are owning the process. Maybe we should think now as Tanzanian, and maybe from communication from this forum, to advise our government to see the importance of getting back to the OGP soon, because what we are doing now, it aligns with the principles of AGP 100%, and going back to it, it will be an opportunity, giving us another opportunity to all of us together to have another action plan with other commitments, like we had other 4 commitments, which will be a roadmap towards achieving our development goals. And I think that is going to inspire all stakeholders, including the CSO, including partners, in shaping our better future. So maybe I should stop from there, and then Shannon, we can invite another speaker to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Naru, for that excellent description of Tanzania's past relationship with OGP and some of the benefits that came out of that. One of the reasons that we at ICNL engage with OGP and support civil society partners to engage with OGP is that OGP is one of the few multilateral institutions that actually require co-creation of commitments between civil society and government, and there's actual monitoring of the government's action plans and willingness to engage with civil society. So it provides an excellent forum for that. Now I wanted to move on to our 3 panelists who are here to speak about specific work that they're doing around participation, engaging with citizens, and gathering information that can then support decision making and service delivery, as well as other forms of oversight of government work. So I first want to ask Maxence. Mello? Yeah. Tanzania again. You just happen to sit next to me, so you go there. Maxence is the executive director at JAMI Forums here in Tanzania. And I wanted to ask you, you have a booth out there that has a lot of interesting work that you're doing around supporting different platforms where people can engage online. Could you talk a little bit about what kind of digital participation tools people in Tanzania are using to engage with government, if at all, and who's leading these initiatives, as well as specifically the initiatives that you're leading at JAMI Forums? If you could talk a bit about that and how you think the tools are helping with your work and your mandate.
Thank you, Shabma. A very good afternoon to everyone. How I wish I could speak Swahili, because you're in the land of Swahili, but I have to speak English for the sake of saving time. Well, we happen to be in a very good and calm country. I believe everyone has seen people are friendly. Probably I met some friends from Uganda who were saying, like, everything seems to be in order. It doesn't just come easily. There are some pushbacks, empowerment to citizens to demand for their rights and such stuff. And some of us, like JAMI Forums, the organization that I lead, and the platform that I found 20 years ago, do try to find ways that we can engage people in a meaningful way. You know, democracy depends on an informed citizenry to survive. And what do we do as JAMI Forums to make sure that we empower citizens to amplify their voices? JAMI Forums reaches more than 3 million people daily. And we have been known as the pushers for accountability in Tanzania. Of course, we are in a plan to get into 8 more countries in Africa. But in Tanzania, this is what we do. It didn't come easily, but with time, we came to learn. One, we empower citizens by giving them a platform to speak freely without fear. And of course, we are the ones who will be accountable to whatever they may say, because we have a way of making sure that we manage the conversations. So we have content managers People may call them moderators, but they are content managers. That's how we call them at Jamii Forums, because they don't just moderate, they manage. And they manage the platform called Jamii Forums. And Jamii is community, so forums, you know what it means. And that has been instrumental for over 20 years now. And that has led a number of accountability kind of actions from state actors and non-state actors. From 2008, when I was arrested, and of course when I was arrested, it was following the resignation of the Prime Minister in Tanzania, that led to the dissolution of the whole cabinet in Tanzania, of course, following a corruption scandal which involved the Prime Minister. And the price I paid was being alleged to be a terrorist back then. But you know what? The pushback was real, and of course some people were held into account. And Jamii Forums became even popular, but of course it became also a for-profit company. Later on we lost revenue because we were deregistered. And at one point we lose advertising revenue, and of course we kept empowering people. But later on, following whatever that I went through, of course I was sent to prison, and I had to appear before the court 159 times in the past 5 years. But later on we came to learn. Of course we kept learning, but we had to unlearn. The unlearning process is not easy, and the relearning process is also not easy. So we had to unlearn and then relearn. We started re-engaging people, and we had to do research. Without research, probably you may not get exactly what people need in the space. We came up with those solutions you might see outside. We have the Jamii Check, an information fact-checking portal. People said we visit Jamii Forums because the only platform we know, once it's written there, it's true. Trust me, we're not the ones who are writing there. It's the people themselves, but they believe whatever they write there is true. We said we are going to provide you a platform where you go, you submit whatever that you have seen on WhatsApp, Telegram, Instagram, TikTok, X, whatever. Once you bring it there, our team will make sure that they go through it in less than 24 hours. Then you know what is true, what's not true, and what's actually a myth. So if you get onto Jamii Check, we have more than 500 stories which have been submitted on the platform. All of them have been fact-checked in the period of about 8 months. And it's the approach that does not exist anywhere, that people are part of the information fact-checking process. And we also came up with the stories of change. When we met state actors, we were like, you guys keep complaining. You don't give us solutions. So we had to talk to people to ask them, what do you do to help your government come up with a solution that works for you? They said, if you could have a platform, you know, people may not tell you that we need stories of change. We need 1, 2, 3. But whenever they come up with a certain kind of idea, they gave us an idea of coming up with a platform called Stories of Change. And we did the first kind of competition in 2021. We got to about 1,500 submissions. We did the same in 2022. We got over 2,000 submissions. And actually the minister who was here was the guest of honor. And that's when we launched the Jamii Check portal. That was November last year. But after that, actually on the last event of 2022, one of the winners was a police officer. That means that is a civil servant who had an idea of what works, but authorities are not taking it seriously. And of course, whatever kind of suggestions that people are posting on that platform called Stories of Change are being taken seriously by the state. From 2022, we came to an agreement with the state, the government, that you know what, people are submitting stories there. We are not the ones who are supposed to bring the stories to you. We need you guys to come onto the platform and start responding to people. As I speak to you, we have government entities on Jamii Forums who are verified. We have politicians who are verified from the opposition to the ruling party. We have ministers on Jamii Forums who are verified, and they're responding to people because we keep pushing them to respond to issues that are concerned to the people. Then we came to realize people said we get into Jamii Forums because you are the home of whistleblowers. You protect us. But we came to realize they need more protection. So we created a platform called Fichua Uovu. It's in Swahili. Just whistleblow it, and we make sure that we take care of you. The moment you hit on that button, whether you're a registered member or not, then you become completely anonymous. Then we signed an MOU with the Anti-Corruption Bureau in Tanzania to make sure that whenever these cases are whistleblown on our platform, someone is in charge. One challenge that we faced on that kind of partnership in the early days, you know how bureaucratic this can become, right? For the ones who are from Africa, probably you know how governments can be bureaucratic. One, they didn't want to respond to issues online because they said those are just stories online. And secondly, they didn't know how to better engage. So we had to revisit, of course, do a quick research and then go through their strategic plan. When we went through their strategic plan, we came to realize they also speak about civic engagement with people online, but they didn't know how to do it. We started by empowering them on how to do it. And then we came to realize that it's not only the Anti-Corruption Bureau which was not aware on how to engage better. So we have most of government institutions that we have built capacities to them on how to engage better, whether it's on X, on Jamii. We don't just do it for Jamii forums, we do it for all the digital platforms because we came to realize we cannot do this alone. So in 2022, we also formed a Digital Rights Coalition. With the Digital Rights Coalition, we could amplify the voices of people together. So we have 22 members of the Digital Rights Coalition in Tanzania. We, of course, Jamii Forums at the moment is leading it. And whenever we have a certain kind of agenda, we push it together. In last year, I was arrested for protection of whistleblowers in Tanzania. Of course, I had to make sure that I do whatever I do to make sure that our whistleblowers are safe. But later on, we decided to make a difference. The difference we made was make sure that you engage, re-engage, but have a law which will safeguard people's rights to privacy. Last year, we partnered with the private sector, CSOs, media, state actors who are collecting people's data, processing people's data, to come up with a model bill on data protection that we submitted to authorities to come up with a law that works for us. Actually, we are the ones who pushed to make sure that we have a data protection commissioner who understands the space very well. Probably you might have seen him here, and you might see us talking to them. Of course, we might at one point be penalized by the same commission, but it hasn't been an easy journey. Last year, we managed to get the data protection law in Tanzania, but through these kind of laws, coalitions, and such stuffs. So thank you. I thank ICNL. They were our partners. I thank Paradigm Initiative from Nigeria. They were our partners. CPESA from Uganda, they were partners. But we have local CSOs. We have over 1,000 people who participated to make sure that we have a model bill that works for the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maxence, and thank you so much for highlighting the importance of civil society and government dialogue, and the importance of government to have buy-in and support, the actual implementation of some of these the feedback that's given by citizens to actually be committed to have good faith to receive that and implement it when feasible. So I think that's a really good lesson from Jamii Forums. I want to turn now to Kiktanet in Kenya, who's doing a lot of work on participation platforms and promoting e-participation in Kenya. Grace Gataiga, could you similar points about what you're working on at Kiktanet and how that's contributing to greater participatory governance as well?
Okay, let me just start by saying Kiktanet is, we are the premier multi-stakeholder think tank in Kenya. We work in ICT policy and regulation. And our task is to ensure and to push for public interest in all the policies, the regulations that come out in that country. And the basis of that is the fact that we have articulated very well that internet is, internet governance is not your normal governance, that it entails different stakeholders. And so long as you're a user of internet, you also have a stake in that governance. And so we have pushed for that this is not your ordinary participation. We have also pushed the fact that when internet came, it really, it wasn't for the government. It was actually spearheaded by the military in the US. And then the businesses picked it up, came up with infrastructure. Civil society was among the, initial stakeholders that produced a lot of content for the internet. And then you had bodies that set standards. You have ICANN, you have ISOC, that the IETFs that are already and have already set the standards. And so the government came in much later, and it wanted to control. During our engagement, of course, the government has pushed for a position that they are elected by the people, and therefore they make decisions for those people. It's quite a legitimate argument. The other thing they say is that as governments, they provide you with the right environment to engage. Again, another very legitimate argument. However, when it comes to the internet, that is not exactly, it doesn't end there. We have participants, we have all the stakeholders that I have mentioned that that are participating already, and they are contributing to the effectiveness of the internet growth, and the fact that we want more people to engage. We do not want anyone to be left behind. And so what we do at Kictanet, just like Max has said, we have different ways of engagement. So we have an email list. And sometimes we have talked that technology has moved, so we need either to move to Slido or we need to move to the current platforms, but they still don't seem to act because that email list still remains effective. And what happens is that as a member of that email list, you can raise any ICT issue. We have rules of engagement. You do not attack individuals because we have practically everyone who has a stake in ICT policy on that list. We have government, we have the ministers, we have the regulators, we have the businesses. We actually had to stop people from using the list to bring their complaints about Safaricom, about Airtel, because we didn't want it again to be a platform for complaints. And so we have rules of engagement that you have to engage on the issue. On those issues, what are you bringing out? And what has happened is that out of that engagement, we sometimes progress those engagements to physical engagement. And some can be bilaterals. So for example, there was a time that people really used to complain about Safaricom, about the fact that you lost your airtime if you didn't use it within time. You lost your data bundles if you didn't use within that time. And I remember one of the listers asking them, if I have my car and I put full tank and I travel to Uganda for a week and I come back, should I not use that fuel? And of course, they said no one had complained. So we put them to task, and actually they acted on that. So Kictanet has been able to push for a lot of action for the different stakeholders to act. So we also work very closely with the Senate ICT Committee, with the National Assembly ICT Committee. The other thing we do is that all ICT proposals, bills, policies, we contribute, and we don't just contribute, we do a written memo. And we started providing a matrix. So we would have a matrix and say, this is the proposal that you have put. These are our concerns. This is what we are proposing. And sometimes we even propose the language to use in the bill. For example, in our cybersecurity bill, the language on child protection, they took hours from word to word. And what that has translated into is that the National Assembly, before sometimes engaging the rest of the public, they will invite us to a closed meeting where we have 1 or 2 hours of engagement. We take them through the laws, what are the concerns, and why do they need to understand certain things. Of course, some of them we disagree. For example, when we were doing the cybersecurity, we disagreed on fake news because we were saying you can't legislate fake news. Fake news has always been there. It has been there in forms of yellow journalism, pink sheets. So it is there and you can't legislate, but they said they had been attacked by citizens and therefore they needed to protect themselves. But they told us to offer them alternative text. We did offer, but it still didn't make it in the way that we would have wanted it to be. Now, the other major law that we worked with the task force that came up is the data protection law. And we moved from step to step. And we remember we had, lots of debate, especially on protecting the office of the data commissioner. We didn't know that politics would play and probably, have that office under threat. And so what the task force told us, and even told the Minister of ICT, is that 80% of that law is what kicked on it, suggested. So we were working very closely with them. And we were happy because, again, Kenya, we enjoy the fact that public participation is entrenched in our constitution. So there's that constitutional requirement for anyone making public policy to engage the stakeholders. And so we use that a lot. And anyone who has come up with law and has not had public participation, people have gone to court and they have won based on public participation. So it's becoming very critical to engage the public. However, there are challenges with that public participation because we don't have an attendant law that supports how you engage with the public. One of the concerns we've had is that every time we make a submission, we actually ask that they put it online. But even if they don't put it online, as we send our letter to Parliament, or as we send our letter to the regulator, or to whoever we are inputting, we also share that on our list, and it goes on our website immediately. We have configured the list to immediately you contribute, it sends onto our website. So it is public. Anyone searching can see what, including our letter, and what it is that we said. So some of the things that we have been asking for is that we need an attendant guideline on how you engage. Number one, when you submit or you put in a proposal, they need to tell you what they have taken on board, because you sometimes work so hard, you work for days, you consult, and then only maybe one sentence is taken into the final outcome document. And what we are saying, we need to be told if our conversations didn't get to be incorporated into the final outcome. Why? What is the reason? Did they go against the Constitution? Were they offensive to public morality? Why were they not taken on board? So that it's also not a waste of time. So there are those challenges that sometimes happen. And so one of the things we also do, we were asked, how do we get this participation onto the ground to the people? And so of course we have our list, which has people interested in ICT, people who have no challenges in access to the internet. And so we negotiated. We actually went to the national broadcaster and negotiated for a weekly program that we call Take on Tech. So in this program, we take topical issues, technology topical issues, and we break them down in a non-tech way. So I do the interview section, and it's amazing that I will walk into hospital and people will be telling me, that technology program, you guys didn't air it last week. And I'm like, I don't work for the broadcaster. I only participate in that component. And then someone will tell you, you know, this issue you were saying is very interesting because 1, 2, 3, and those are ordinary people. Actually, what amazed me is a guy who had been hired by my neighbor to come and paint the house, you know. And one day he just stopped me and asked me, I think I know you. And I'm thinking, where would you know me? So he goes, you do that technology program. And you know, the last 2 weeks you guys have not aired it because we wait for it to understand how technology affects us. So in our own small way, we are trying to get that information to the people. And then we are also using, you know, different strategies. For example, how do we put this information in a digestible way? So small videos, comic strips, and they're there, we share them, just 1 sentence, 2 sentences that break down technological issues and how people are affected. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Grace, for providing that overview. I think we could hear a lot more stories from both Kenya and Tanzania about the kind of impacts of the work you're doing. And I just wanted to say I really appreciated how you emphasized, one, the importance of the legal frameworks to support e-participation and participation generally, not just having it in the Constitution, which is also important, but also implementing legislation. And then 2, the importance of you know, using both online means and physical participation, traditional participation, and other traditional forms of media to reach people. So that's really great to hear. I now want to turn it over to Morris Sainzoga he's a program director with the National Democratic Institute. And Morris, you work globally, and the layout of this, I can't even see you, but you work globally to support you know, these types of tech initiatives that support e-participation and other you know, governance initiatives around the world. Could you talk a bit about your experience and some of the lessons that you've learned over the years of what works, what doesn't work, and some of the challenges to e-participation?
Great. Thank you, everyone. My name is Maurice Sainzoga, and I work for NDI. NDI is National Democratic Institute, which is a worldwide organization working to strengthen government institutions, democratic institutions through citizen participation, openness, government accountability, and specifically, I'm part of the team we call Democracy and Technology. So basically, we try to understand how to best leverage digital technology to strengthen democracy and democratic institutions. I think I will go into the same vein of the discussions that were prior to kind of like provide some of the solutions and things that I've learned in my you know, career at NDI, but also before that, I used to work in you know, working with governments to kind of like develop their digital transformation strategy. I'm also kind of a citizen of East Africa. I grew up in Rwanda. I'm Rwandan, so I was also part as a citizen, kind of like be able to observe how the landscape has changed in terms of provision of government services. From maybe an anecdote, when I was going to get my ID card, you had to take a piece of paper and then have it signed by, I don't know, 10 or like 7 government officials who don't have an office. So you have to turn them maybe at night when they go to, you know, dinner or something like that. You can imagine like potential for corruption and things like that. But now things have changed. It's actually the government that set up appointments and goes to the community to facilitate that process. So I'll maybe talk about like 3 things that are kind of lessons to kind of highlight some of the things that I've seen work and maybe that could be helpful. So the first thing is a kind of an approach that we champion at NDI. It's called human-centered design to take delivery. It's basically putting yourself in the shoes of the end user. And some of the examples they gave is like, there are people who don't have access to internet. You know, when you're thinking about digitizing government services, you have to think about like that person who's a nomadic. You know, he doesn't have a fixed address. How are you going to serve them? You know, so you have to think about like different scenarios, not designing things for people who live in the city like DA or but also think about those people who live in the countryside, who are not educated, etc. The other thing that touches on that approach is to think about features that are really important to people. The reality of the matter is we live in a world of limited resources. We don't have a lot of money, and these systems really can be expensive. So think about like, how do you prioritize things that really people need? And I remember talking to one minister of ICT, and he said like one of the most used tool or feature was what they call casier judiciaire, which is like a background. So if you go to apply for a job, they ask you like a criminal record basically to make sure you're not a bad person or something like that. But those are like the services that were most used for young people who are trying to look for jobs. So it's important to kind of understand the needs of the people through that process we call human-centered design. The second thing that I want to say is that from my experience, I think the digital transformation, like strategy making process, is kind of a participatory actually, at least like where I've, the places I've been involved or like I read, at the beginning, they actually invite people to, provide opinion. The problem happens at the end, like after they have a strategy document. How do you go back to people to actually see if the things that you plan out are working, are making a difference? And I think we need to include that kind of feedback mechanism to see if those laws maybe are not working, maybe we need to change them, or those plans are not working, maybe you need to change them. So that's something else to think about. The last thing is basically to institutionalize the participatory process. And by that I mean is, what does good look like? If you can imagine, what is good like participation look like? And can we add maybe to the strategy documents, to those KPIs that really reflect, that good world that we want to see? So I think that's like most of the countries really have like a digital transformation strategy at this point, but I don't think they do have indicators or KPIs that are really reflective of that participation. I think if we can really make sure and advocate to make sure that they have measures of accountability that reflect that participation, I think you'll make a difference. So the last thing I want to say is that one other aspect of my work is basically understanding new and emerging technology. And I do believe that emerging technologies are providing things that we haven't seen before to expand or broaden participation. I'm thinking about accessibility, for example, people living with disability. You have things that have like a screen reader that are transformative for people who are blind, for example, and who can participate in this digital system. We have different tools that can be used for deliberation. Deliberation is impossible. You can have 1 million people in a room to agree on one thing. Even this could be like a trivial thing, they will not agree, right? But with digital systems, you can have millions of people deliberate online. So we need also to think about new possibilities that are created through these technologies that we have, and see how we can really harness them for participation. So I'll stop there and maybe hear like questions or other comments.
Thank you, Morris. I think one thing I really like about the human-centered design approach is that oftentimes when we talk about participation, we're talking about it after the tool's been developed already and it's there. But when you actually start from the very beginning of the process and include like feedback and needs assessments and working with communities to develop the tool itself, there's greater buy-in, and then it's more likely that that tool will be used by the public. So that's like holistic participation in a way. So I like that you mentioned that, and also tracking, the importance of tracking progress and impact of these kinds of processes. So I have many questions I want to ask the panelists, but for the sake of time and because I know folks are probably hungry and wanting to get to lunch, I want to turn it over to you and maybe have you guys ask a couple questions to our speakers, whether it's about Tanzania and OGP or about some of the tools that were discussed or the lessons. Turn it over to you. I think I can pass around a mic.
Thank you so much, presenters. My name is Moses Omara. I am from Uganda. My question goes to the last presenter, that given the challenges of the rural-based communities in accessing the digital world, how have you been actually in position to apply the human-centered design approach to be able actually to address that technology device? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Rispa Onyango, Lawyers Hub, and my question is to anyone in the panel, I think, as relates to having closed door engagement. And I think many times we caution the government, or we fault the government because they tend to probably come up with, whether it's policies or laws or decisions, within particular confines. But do you think we suffer that risk even within our CSO engagements or, within our communities, whereby specific, let's say, we can use think tanks, or you can use Jamii forums, Kictonet, all the different representations where you're the ones coming in and having these engagements, right? And is it possible that could also be replicated within our engagement ecosystems, which is something that you're actually trying to drive away from, and how are we navigating that? Yeah.
Thank you. So first question to Morris about about doing human-centered design in areas that have low to no connectivity, maybe rural areas where digital literacy might be lower as well, the challenges and how maybe some of the lessons from your work. And then I think the second question we'll pose to Grace and Maxence around, a lot of times, and this is true everywhere, right? A lot of decisions are only made in closed door meetings and negotiations, and civil society has to fight to be in the room, but that's where some of the quote-unquote real work is happening. How do you open those spaces up and make them more transparent and accessible to the public?
Yeah, one example of what countries have done in this regard. There are two aspects that are really important. Basically, is digital infrastructure, availability of digital infrastructure, and basically skills, digital literacy, for example. There are countries that are trying to push towards basically you don't even have to speak to a person. But in that case, you do have to set up system whereby you have more of a parallel system. I think a good example is actually from Kenya. I think a program is called Huduma Mashinani, yeah, exactly, which is a citizen outreach, service where they go out in the community rather than having them come to like a center or something like that. So I think try to understand that process is basically try to understand, how the conditions of how those that people in the rural area live, the resources that they have, and the resources that they don't have, and then make sure that you put those services closer to them. So through maybe a service where you go out to them, that doesn't maybe require like internet connection. During that time, you bring like connections, and then you do like processes. So those are some of the elements that I've seen or I've read about. It's more setting up parallel systems that cater to people who might have like really low or limited resources.
Go faster. Okay, Rispa, that question you have asked, I think for Kenya, the platform is open to everyone. So, for example, the calls to public participation, they're actually open. They do them in the newspapers and on, I think, Parliament's website. But there's always a call in the major dailies. And I know at Kictanet, whenever that happens, it's shared on the list. The list happens to have different stakeholders, and I know you're also there, and different civil society organizations. So what we do at Kictanet is that convening where we ask people to put in their views, because then we have been able to push. We were actually very bold, just like going to Parliament to say, this is what we have and this is what we want to speak to you about. And for us, we take it as the representative that people have contributed. The recent input on the cybersecurity guidelines, we had a call. On top of that, we had a Twitter space, and we got so many people from different stakeholders. So we take that as the voice from the community. We also had actually a separate engagement with civil society organizations, the traditional ones that don't work in cybersecurity, that don't work in tech, just to break down for them what these guidelines mean and what they mean for their work. And they made very good input, and we also supported that separately, even with the written comments. And the idea is, the more the merrier. In fact, if we all articulate the same concerns, then we are telling the legislators that this is a real concern that must be addressed. So I think for me, I will just tell you that there isn't really that effort to close anyone out. And I think because the Constitution is open for us, and those calls are in the public, I think the onus is on us to engage and to participate.
I start probably the first one on the human-centered approach, because we happen to have that at Jamii Forums. From early March backwards, I was not using glasses. I could see clearly. I didn't understand why people are using glasses. So we had to engage people who are visually impaired to redesign Jamii Forums to make sure that people who are having such kind of disability can access Jamii Forums. So we had two guys when we were redesigning Jamii Forums, and actually that's what works for them, and the platform is accessible to people who are visually impaired. I think sometimes you have to understand that you are serving a diverse kind of audience, and you have to engage them because they're the consumers of your product or your service. So we learn by doing. And on the second one, the minister who was here is a member of Jamii Forums, and he's verified on our platform. And one thing you need to know is that you need to understand the power dynamics sometimes. We happen to be in so many loose coalitions in Tanzania. We have the Coalition of Right to Information. We have the Digital Rights Coalition. We also have this loose coalition with the religious leaders, civil state actors, civil servants. It's a big one, but it's a poor. We have a coalition of lawyers who are doing strategic litigation. So you have to be in so many kind of coalitions to know what's happening and who is behind what and whom to influence. Again, make sure that you have a good guy on the other side. They are the guys who will be letting you know what's happening and whom to engage. We learn by doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you all. We're past time. Does
Okay, maybe I don't know if we have time. I wanted to contribute on the
Yeah.
second question.
Oh yeah, please.
Yes. Yeah, she asked about how about maybe engaging in close the door and participating in decision making, right? Yeah, for me, I think maybe we should also think about the civic space, because that is, we need a space in making decision. All of us, we agree that the situation of civic space in Africa and actually reflect that of the global, it continues to deteriorate if we really think about our, our legal framework and about everything which is going on in the continent. And actually all civil society organizations, human rights activists, all of us digital rights activists have been working so hard to widen the space so as we can be in that table. We don't want to be the food so as people can eat that. We want to sit around the table and discuss what is in the table. And that is all of us have been fighting. I think everyone is fighting for that space. But that space, it is shrinking and it continues to deteriorate. I think maybe which all of us should think about one of the resolutions from this forum, maybe to think how are we going to widen the civic space and how are we setting the frameworks which will set an enabling environment whereby all we can be in the table and not be the food, so as all of us, civil society organizations can participate in decision making, so as we can participate in those decision making. Maybe we can make a reflection, taking few examples from the African countries. We see countries like Zimbabwe, DRC, Chad, in Tanzania. Our laws, civic space laws, they are not allowing us to be in those tables. Our countries, our government, daily they are imposing laws which restrict civil societies and the human rights activists to participate in decision making, to do their work. If we take few examples of journalists who have been, we have a good example. Max is here. Maxi, you were a terrorist in 2019, I guess. Yeah, right? We have a journalist from you wasn't, I mean, you were, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah, she was charged yeah, right, yeah, it's human rights defenders who wrote their voices, and now we have Max here. But we have, I think there's a journalist in Mozambique, Solomon. I think he was charged with several charges for just challenging the Ministry of Defense. The same in every country. I think we have those people, so we should think about that. So everyone is trying always to secure that space, but it is deteriorating. So I think one of, for me, one of the solution is to think about getting a public support, because all of us every day we are talking about, we are doing this for public interest, but what is missing in our initiatives is that the public support. The public doesn't understand that human rights defenders, human rights activists, digital rights activists Actually, they are working for the public. So we need to educate the public. We need to mobilize the public so they can support what we are doing. We can take a good example of Malawi. For instance, in the 2020 election, civil society in Malawi, they have worked so hard to mobilize the public, which they used the digital spaces. The Malawi now is one, it has a certain example in African countries whereby they have unturned the election. And in 2020, the current president now was from opposition parties, but that was a good work which was done from human rights activists from Malawi who mobilized the public, and now the public pushed to have that space. I think we can adapt to that and be one of the solution. Thank you.
Wow, so I couldn't have put it better, honestly. The importance and the intersection between all the civic space rights. You can't have participation without freedom of expression, access to information, and the right to assemble and associate. So that's all very important, and perspectives from other countries as well. And also, I think not just being in the room, right? Because I think example Grace provided of Kiktanet being able to take the voices of people. So if you have a seat at the table, how can you bring other people's voices to that table through these participation platforms? But that's only possible if you know what the agenda is. And so you also need to be able to participate and have information about the agenda and be part of the agenda setting in order to effectively do that. But I just wanted to, I think, Nur, your final comments were excellent end to this. And I want to thank all of the panelists for contributing to this session. And thank you for staying longer and cutting into your lunch. Please reach out to any of the panelists. Jammy Forums has a table. Kiktanet, do you have a table out there? No, but if you see Grace, please ask her about the programs that they're leading, and please come chat with us at ICNL. Again, we have been supporting these initiatives, civil society engagement with government in different ways, but including through this Open Government Partnership. And we actually just published, we launched it at the recent OGP Summit in Estonia, guide on OGP commitments, example commitments to increase digital civic space in the ways that all of us have discussed. And so if you want specific example commitments that you can take to your governments, whether your government is part of OGP or not, and then also example lessons that other countries, case studies from other countries that have done similar actions, please go to our website. You can find that resource. I'm happy to provide it to you after this session. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of South Africa.